struggling waiter fired for serving Neymar. Then Neymar changes his life. How will this story escalate? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The soft hum of conversation filled the air, blending with the gentle clinking of fine silverware against pristine plates. The restaurant was one of the most prestigious in the city, a place reserved for the elite, where business deals were sealed over glasses of vintage wine and celebrities dined in quiet luxury. For most, it was a world of indulgence, where the worries of life faded behind the glow of chandeliers and candlelit tables. But for Lucas, it was a battlefield. Lucas had been working as a waiter at Le Grand Étoile for nearly a year. The job was demanding, unforgiving, and filled with stress at every turn. The restaurant's manager, Mr. Carvalho, was a tyrant, scrutinizing every move the staff made, waiting for the smallest mistake to unleash his wrath. Lucas had learned to walk on eggshells, keeping his head down, working tirelessly, and hoping to avoid trouble. He needed this job. His younger sister was in school, and his mother's medical bills were mounting. There was no room for failure. That evening, the atmosphere in the restaurant was even more charged than usual. A VIP guest was expected, and the entire staff had been instructed to be on their best behavior. No mistakes, no delays. Perfection was the only acceptable standard. Lucas moved swiftly between tables, balancing trays, filling glasses, ensuring every guest's needs were met. He knew the routine by heart, but as he approached one of the private dining areas, his breath caught in his throat. Sitting at the table was Neymar, the football legend, the global superstar, the man Lucas had idolized since childhood. For a moment, he hesitated. The weight of the moment hit him like a wave. He had watched Neymar play countless times, had celebrated his victories from the small living room of his family's modest apartment. And now, here he was about to serve him. Taking a deep breath, Lucas steadied himself and stepped forward. "Good evening, sir," he said, keeping his voice professional. "Welcome to Le Grand Étoile. It's an honor to serve you tonight." Neymar looked up, offering a polite nod. There was an ease about him, a quiet confidence that was different from the arrogance Lucas had expected. He was dressed simply, without the excessive flash some celebrities flaunted. The rest of the table, businessmen, agents, and friends, chatted casually, occasionally glancing at menus. Lucas focused on doing his job. He took their orders, ensuring everything was precise. As he moved back and forth, bringing appetizers, refilling drinks, he couldn't help but steal glances at Neymar. There was something surreal about watching someone so famous act so normal. Then, as Lucas was setting a glass of wine in front of one of the guests, he felt a hand lightly tap his wrist. "Are you all right?" Neymar's voice was calm, but his gaze was sharp, observant. Lucas blinked in surprise. Most customers barely acknowledged waitstaff unless they wanted something. "Yes, sir," he replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Just a busy night." Neymar studied him for a moment but said nothing further. Lucas quickly moved away, unsure why the brief exchange had rattled him so much. Everything was going smoothly. The guests were pleased, the food was perfect, and Lucas had managed to keep himself from making any mistakes. But just as he thought he might get through the night without incident, disaster struck. Another waiter, rushing past, bumped into Lucas just as he was carrying a tray of drinks. The impact was minor, but it was enough to send one of the glasses tumbling. Time seemed to slow as the red wine splashed onto the crisp white tablecloth in front of Neymar. Silence. Lucas felt his stomach drop. Every eye in the room turned toward him. The world seemed to shrink, the air heavy with tension. Mr. Carvalho was there in an instant, his face twisted with rage. "Lucas," he barked, his voice cutting through the hush like a knife. "What have you done?" Lucas scrambled to clean the mess, his hands shaking. I'm so sorry, sir. It was an accident." "An accident?" Carvalho hissed. "Do you have any idea who you just embarrassed?" He turned to Neymar, his expression shifting to forced politeness. "Mr. Neymar, I sincerely apologize for this incompetence. Neymar, to Lucas's astonishment, didn't seem angry. He merely looked at the spill, then back at Lucas. "It's just wine," Neymar said simply, but Carvalho wasn't listening. His fury was directed solely at Lucas. "I've had enough of your clumsiness. You are done here. Get out." Lucas's breath caught. "Sir, please." "I don't want to hear it," Carvalho snapped. "You're fired." The words hit like a physical blow. Fired. Just like that. His job, his only source of income, gone in an instant. He could feel the eyes of the entire restaurant on him. Some filled with pity, others with amusement. The humiliation burned through him, but before he could move, a voice interrupted. "That's not necessary." It was Neymar. The entire room seemed to freeze. Carvalho forced a smile. "Sir, with all due respect, this is a private matter." "No," Neymar said, his voice steady. "It's not." Carvalho stiffened. "This waiter has made too many mistakes." It was an accident," Neymar interrupted. "And if you're firing him over this, then maybe you should rethink how you treat your employees." Lucas's eyes widened. Was Neymar defending him? The restaurant fell into hushed whispers. Guests exchanged glances, clearly entertained by the scene unfolding before them. Carvalho looked flustered but tried to maintain control. "Mr. Neymar, this is a professional establishment. We can't allow careless mistakes." Neymar leaned forward slightly. "And yet, you allow mistreatment of your staff?" Carvalho's face turned red, but before he could respond, Neymar reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his wallet, and placed a thick stack of cash on the table. "I was going to tip him anyway," Neymar said, "but now, consider this compensation for the job you just took from him." Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Lucas stared at the money, his mind struggling to process what was happening. He had never seen so much cash in one place before. Carvalho looked like he had swallowed a lemon. He opened his mouth to protest, but Neymar wasn't finished. "This restaurant is known for its exclusivity," Neymar said. "But you should know something. Exclusivity means nothing if you treat people unfairly. And I don't support businesses that do that." More murmurs filled the air. Some guests nodded in agreement, while others watched with barely concealed amusement. Carvalho knew he had lost. He couldn't afford to alienate a star like Neymar. His jaw clenched. "Lucas is no longer employed here. If you wish to support him, that is your business." Neymar's eyes flicked toward Lucas. "Come with me." Lucas hesitated. "What? You don't need to stay in a place that doesn't respect you," Neymar said simply. Lucas's hands trembled. He had just lost everything, but had he? Slowly, he nodded, stepping away from the table. Neymar stood, clapped him on the back, and said, "Let's talk." And just like that, Lucas walked out of the restaurant, not as a man who had just been fired, but as someone who had just been given an opportunity he never expected. Lucas stepped out of the restaurant with Neymar, his mind spinning. The night had started as just another grueling shift, filled with stress and exhaustion. Now, he was walking beside one of the most famous footballers in the world, unsure of what was coming next. They stopped near the valet station, where Neymar pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, the weight of the situation settling in. He had just been fired. No paycheck. No way to pay his mother's medical bills. No way to cover his sister's school expenses. What was he supposed to do now? Neymar ended his call and turned back to him. "You have somewhere to be?" he asked casually. Lucas blinked. Not anymore," he admitted. "I just lost my job." Neymar chuckled. "Yeah, I noticed." He leaned against a nearby pillar, watching the city lights in the distance. "You've worked in restaurants for a while?" Lucas nodded. "Most of my life. My father left when I was young, so I started working to help my mom. She got sick a few years ago, and my little sister is still in school." He exhaled, rubbing his face. "I didn't have a choice. I needed money." Neymar studied him for a moment, then said, "If you could do anything, what would it be?" Lucas frowned. "What?" "You heard me," Neymar said. "If money wasn't the issue, if you had the chance to do something you actually wanted, what would it be?" Lucas hesitated. No one had ever asked him that before. He had spent his entire life focused on survival, never daring to dream beyond that. But if he could choose, "I love cooking," he admitted quietly. "Before I had to start working full-time, my mom used to teach me recipes. It was the one thing that made me happy." He let out a dry laugh. "But being a chef? That's not exactly an option for someone like me." Neymar smirked. "Why not?" Lucas sighed. "Because I don't have the training. I don't have the money. People don't just wake up one day and get to be chefs." Neymar crossed his arms. "People don't just wake up one day and become footballers, either. They work for it." Lucas opened his mouth to argue but stopped. Neymar had a point. Before he could respond, a sleek black car pulled up in front of them. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Neymar motioned toward the car. "Get in." Lucas hesitated. "Where are we going?" "To get you a real opportunity." Lucas's heart pounded. Was this actually happening? He wanted to ask a million questions, but instead, he took a deep breath and slid into the car. The ride was silent at first. Lucas stared out the window, watching the city blur past. Finally, he turned to Neymar. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Neymar shrugged. "Because I've been where you are. I've been the kid no one believed in, the one who had to fight for every opportunity." He smirked. "And because I like proving people wrong." Lucas didn't know how to respond to that, so he stayed quiet. The car eventually pulled up in front of a building Lucas didn't recognize. It wasn't a restaurant, at least not one like the high-end places he was used to working in. The sign above the entrance read Esquina du Sabor, corner of flavor. Neymar stepped out first, and Lucas followed hesitantly. Inside, the atmosphere was completely different from what he had expected. It was warm and welcoming, filled with the rich aroma of spices and sizzling food. The staff moved with efficiency but without the cold, rigid structure Lucas had been used to at his previous job. There was laughter, genuine joy. A middle-aged man in a chef's coat approached them, wiping his hands on a towel. "Neymar," he said with a smile. "Didn't expect to see you here tonight." Neymar clapped him on the back. "Needed a favor." The chef raised an eyebrow. "Oh!" Neymar gestured to Lucas. "This is Lucas. He's looking for a fresh start." Lucas swallowed hard. "Sir, The chef held up a hand. "You work in kitchens before?" Lucas nodded. "Yes, but mostly as a waiter." The chef gave him a considering look. "Ever work on the line?" "No, but I know my way around a kitchen." The chef turned to Neymar. "You sure about this?" Neymar smirked. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." The chef sighed, then turned back to Lucas. "All right, you start tomorrow. 5 a.m. Lucas's eyes widened. "Wait, just like that?" The chef shrugged. "You were vouched for by Neymar. That's enough for me." Lucas couldn't believe it. He had walked into the restaurant expecting nothing, and now he had a job. A real opportunity. Neymar clapped him on the shoulder. "Now you just have to prove yourself." Lucas's heart pounded as he extended his hand. "I won't let you down." The chef shook it. "We'll see." That night, Lucas barely slept. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on him. But for the first time in a long time, it wasn't fear. It was excitement. When he arrived at Esquina du Sabor the next morning, he was greeted by the smell of fresh bread and the sight of chefs already prepping ingredients for the day. He was handed an apron and immediately thrown into work. The pace was relentless, but Lucas loved it. He chopped vegetables, helped prep sauces, and shadowed the more experienced chefs. Every time he made a mistake, instead of being yelled at, he was corrected. It was a completely different world from where he had come from. As the weeks passed, Lucas improved. His knife skills became sharper, his timing better. He started assisting on the line, plating dishes, learning techniques he had only ever seen on television. Then, one evening, something happened that changed everything. Lucas had just finished plating a dish when the chef walked up behind him, arms crossed. "Not bad," he said. Lucas exhaled in relief. The chef smirked. "You ready to run the line for a night?" Lucas's heart nearly stopped. "Me?" The chef nodded. "You've been working hard. Time to see if you can handle the pressure." Lucas couldn't believe it. He had started as an inexperienced kitchen assistant, and now he was being trusted with leading a station for the night. He nodded. "I'm ready." That night, he cooked like his life depended on it. Orders flew in, and Lucas handled them with precision. Every plate had to be perfect. Every dish had to be flawless. And when the final orders went out, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The staff clapped him on the back, and the chef gave him an approving nod. "Good work." As Lucas untied his apron, exhausted but exhilarated, his phone buzzed. A message from Neymar. "Heard you ran the line tonight. Knew you had it in you. Keep pushing." Lucas stared at the screen, emotion welling in his chest. He had been fired. Now he was thriving, all because Neymar had given him a chance. Lucas barely had time to process everything that had happened in the past few weeks. The transformation from a struggling waiter to an up-and-coming chef felt surreal. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise, pushing himself harder, determined to prove that he belonged in this kitchen. And every night, as he walked home, exhausted but fulfilled, he knew he was doing something he had never been able to do before, building a future. But the real test was yet to come. One afternoon, as Lucas prepped ingredients for the dinner rush, the head chef walked up to him with a serious expression. "You have plans tomorrow?" he asked. Lucas frowned. No. Why?" The chef smirked. "Because tomorrow you're catering a private event." Lucas's knife slipped from his fingers. "Wait, what? Private event?" the chef repeated, amused by Lucas's reaction. "You'll be leading the team preparing the food." Lucas's stomach tightened. "But I've never done anything like that before." "Good," the chef said. "Then it's time to learn." Lucas barely slept that night. He stayed up watching cooking tutorials, reading about menu planning, and memorizing techniques he had learned over the past weeks. He couldn't afford to fail. The next day, he arrived at the event early, making sure everything was in place. The venue was a stunning mansion, the kind Lucas had only ever seen in magazines. The staff bustled around him, setting up tables, arranging decorations, and preparing for what was clearly a high-profile gathering. Lucas took a deep breath, running through the menu one last time. He had to get this right. As guests began arriving, Lucas and his team worked like a well-oiled machine. Dishes were plated with precision, ingredients balanced perfectly. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Everything was going smoothly. Then the final course was served. Lucas was just about to step back and let the evening finish when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "I knew you could do it." He turned sharply. Neymar, dressed in a sleek black suit. He grinned at Lucas, clearly impressed. Lucas could barely form words. You set this up?" Neymar shrugged. "I told you I believed in you." Lucas looked around, realization dawning on him. This wasn't just any event. This was Neymar's event. "You did this for me?" Lucas asked, still in disbelief. "I did this because you earned it," Neymar corrected. "I just gave you the opportunity." Lucas swallowed hard, overwhelmed by emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." Neymar smirked. "Then don't. Just keep proving me right." At that moment, Lucas realized something. He wasn't just some waiter who got lucky. He was a chef, and his journey was only just beginning.